Hi, Jonathan. Really great to have you on board. So I've been looking forward to this for a long time. So obviously talking a little bit different than maybe some of the other businesses we've been talking to up to this point as part of this sort of leadership session. So a lot of the other businesses are about things like assessment or have been about MIS predominantly.
Yeah.
Your business is slightly different, which we'll get onto in a few minutes for sure. But I've known you for a little while, so I've known you, probably actually now. Oh man, it must have been going on for almost over 10 years.
18 years or so, yeah. So
18 years.
Yeah.
Oh wow! And I knew you when you were in Multi Academy Trust, so one of the first, if I remember rightly. So
so I started doing this in 2003. Started working in the academy sector in 2003. Before lots of academies opened, so delivering academy number 6 as it was. So that's how long we've been doing this, Nick. And that's when we first met. When I was looking at why do I want to buy Sims. So that was where we first started the journey. So.
Yeah, wow, that is some time ago as well, isn't it? Jeez, time moves on quickly for sure.
I've had 2 children in that period of time, and they've all grown up and off to universities. So so it does fly by. So,
It certainly does. So can you just give us a little bit of a view on your journey, actually? So you worked in, and what did you do before you worked at?
So for my sins, I worked for a consultancy firm doing PFI projects. So that's how I got into the education sector. So I was involved in working for Atkins in their PFI business. So I was looking at how we price the 25-year concession for a PFI project. So looking at things like IT, energy, FM, looking at those sort of things around the building. So I was very much looking around the built environment and how we looked after that for a 25-year period. I wrote my MBA dissertation on taking price and volume risk on PFI contracts for energy, how to make money for the private sector. So I've gone from being on the dark side to hopefully doing a little bit more positive these days. So if we talk about PFI and that, I don't always get positive feedback to my previous lives. So yes, I've been doing that for probably 5 or 6 years, and Atkins decided he didn't want to do its education business anymore, and I decided to move on and take an opportunity to leave, and didn't know what I was going to go and do. So that was quite an interesting challenge to be in taking that risk. I was approached by one of the sponsors of one of the first Multi Academy Trusts. So when it was private sponsorship, the sponsors had to put £2 million of their own money into the academy program. So the sponsor I work with put in £2 million into 3 academies. Gives you the scaling opportunities, things like that we were doing at that stage. So that's where I went on that journey, and I was very much involved as the project manager, looking at IT, which is obviously where we met, looking at building and looking at the operational side of academies. And I worked at that time with a guy called David Whitman, who was the chief exec of the trust, and Sir John Rowling, who set up Pixel, and who's sadly no longer with us, but he was the education advisor on the project. So that's where I started my journey. And David and Sir John were looking very much at the education side and how to transform the education side of an academy. And I was given the brief to look at the building and the IT and the operational side of it all. So that's where I started my journey in the academy sector in 2003. Worked for the trust through to 2010, and that was an interesting journey. So going from having nothing to having 3 buildings in process, and 2 delivered. So we delivered £60 million of buildings. We put in a private cloud, which is all being talked about now. So before cloud networks existed, we put in a central server farm, central Sims instance, central Active Directory instance in the academy, and then put big 100 meg, which were big at the time, broadband pipes from the 2 other academies in. So everything was based in one server farm. So it would be great to do that now, but we did that in 2005. And again, you helped us at the time in putting a Sims instance that managed those 3 academies in one scenario. So that was where my journey started. Ended up being the operations director for a while, looking at the day-to-day management of the trust, managing the admin team, managing catering, IT, as well as delivering the building. So interesting challenges, and probably didn't do me any good from a stress level point of view. I can remember walking out of a meeting once thinking, why am I doing this? And just saying, well, okay, I'm not going to come back ever again. But I did. But yeah. So then after that journey, went back into consultancy. So that was where I went and joined a big American consultancy firm in January 2010 called Navigant, and to do building suits for the future projects, which, if you all remember, there was then an election in 2010, and Michael Gove got into power and said, oh, well, we're not going to do BSF anymore. So going from a nice, secure environment of working in academies, public sector pension scheme, all of those sort of things, to work for a private sector company that was being made redundant. And you start to look at it as thinking, oh, that wasn't a good career. But
Wow.
But it was good. So that was where I went to. And Navigant was doing building schools for the future, but we're also working with some of the new large academy trusts, AET, Ormiston, Brook Western, people like that, starting to look at how they were managing building projects, how they were doing delivery. And that's where I started on that journey of thinking, well, okay, I was 40, which might give you a clue to the next bit of the conversation. And I'm thinking, well, okay, how do we take my PFI experience of managing buildings in the long term for the next 25 years? Because these trusts are responsible for these buildings for 125 years. So how do I manage it for 25 years? So if you think 40 to plus 25 is 65. Oh, that means I can retire and things like that. So that was my long-term career plan in 2011, and we started to build up that thinking about how you manage the data, and that was what it was about. There was huge amounts of data out there about built environment, about energy, about all the things that go on in an academy, and there's a whole range of solutions out there for managing data around the education space, but it was very Heath Robinson, very small business, lots of opportunities around how to manage data, and there's a whole range of tools out there. And I'm thinking, well, how do we make best use of the tools that are already out there to manage? That's what we were doing in Navigate. Went along that journey. Worked with a lot of the large academy trusts, help the guys in the trust network, so the trust network through our relationships and things like that. And then in 2015, Navigant didn't want to do education. So there's a common theme in this that obviously I do things to people that they don't want to work in the education sector with me anymore. Anyhow, that's where we got to. But so got the opportunity to take some of the Navigant education clients out and create EO consulting. So did that back in 2015, and I did that with my business partner at the time, and we created EO consulting and went on and did some interesting things. Carrying on what we're doing with a Navigant, so looking at the data piece where we've been using Coyles to manage building condition data, and there's lots of great tools for collecting data. Still not very good tools at presenting data and making data engaging and useful. So actually, you don't spend the time working out what the PDF and the Excel spreadsheet tell you, and actually look at the data, interrogate it, and give you some ideas. And that's where EO has come from. So we've built using out-of-the-box Microsoft product. We're not doing anything hugely clever. We're not building proprietary platforms. All we're doing is we're making Microsoft product work in a way that's it's got an education wrapper on it. Does that make sense? So we're taking Power BI, we're taking Azure, we're taking IoT, and all the different bits and pieces that Microsoft offer out of the box, and plugging them together and putting an education wrapper on them. Does that make sense? And yes, we do it in other sectors as well, but fundamentally we're based around the education sector, because that's what I've been doing for the last 24 years now. So I only have so many ideas, and I don't want to learn new things, because I'm getting to that stage in life where I don't want to put any. But that's where we are. So EO offers data solutions designed to help academy trusts save money and become more effective organisations. We're not going to be efficient, because if you do the wrong thing efficiently, we're trying to make you more effective. So I'm looking at the stuff that actually will really make an impact on that journey, whether that's around building condition, around energy, around carbon, and yes, we've got some tools that look at education data, mainly looking at benchmarking of the data to the public sector. So rather than using the department's benchmarking tools, we've taken the data and tried to make it a little bit more user friendly. But we don't do an awful lot on that at the moment, because the carbon piece and the carbon journey is where we've been focusing on for the last couple of years. Does that give you a bit too much information possibly on my journey to date? But that's how I've got to where I'm at. So yeah, so now we work with probably 60 of the 100 largest academy trusts in different ways. We with the journey, and obviously over the last few years we've become more embedded with Barker's. They bought out my business partner and invested in the business back in 2018. So now we're part of the Barker family and doing that. So working very closely with Stuart White, Rob Gould at Barker in how they go on and make the difference. That makes sense. I'll look at the data, analyse the data, give the look at what we do, but then the Barker team go on and deliver it, because fundamentally I don't like doing real work, and that's what they're there to help me, is do that real work piece.